There is a misunderstanding that has shaped nearly every aspect of human civilization. It influences who rises to positions of leadership, who we choose to follow and trust, and what qualities we believe define a great leader. It influences how we govern ourselves, how we raise our children, how we build our relationships, and even how we understand ourselves. It's a misunderstanding so deeply woven into our reality that most people never stop to question it. We've been taught that power comes from control, that the stronger something is, the more influence it exerts. The more authority it possesses, the more control it exerts, and the more influence it has over people and circumstances around it. And because of this, we spend much of our lives trying to gain power, trying to hold on to power, and trying not to lose it. Yet, what if this understanding is fundamentally backwards? What if the very things we've been taught are signs of power and leadership are actually signs of disempowerment? If that's true, then it forces us to ask a profound question. If control is not power, then what is it? Because nearly everything we've been taught about power and leadership is rooted in the idea of control. We are taught that leaders are those who can influence others, direct outcomes, shape events, and bend circumstances to their will. Yet by the end of this video, you'll discover that true leadership has almost nothing to do with control at all. That it's something far more empowering than most people have ever imagined. Because if control truly is the source of effective leadership, then it should create freedom rather than fear. It should create confidence rather than dependence. It should create empowerment rather than limitation. Yet when we honestly examine the effects of control, a very different picture begins to emerge. The more we attempt to force outcomes, the more resistance we seem to encounter. The more desperately we cling to control, the more fearful we become of losing it. And if leadership is truly rooted in control, then why do some of the most controlling people leave behind fear, division, and dependency, while others with seemingly no authority at all inspire transformation within millions of people wherever they go? Because genuine power has never come from controlling life, and true leadership has never come from controlling people. The people who have the greatest impact on humanity were rarely the people who sought power. They were rarely the people who demanded obedience, insisted on agreement, or attempted to force others to follow them. Instead, they embodied something. They represented something. They lived in alignment with the truth so deeply that others could feel it. Their lives became examples of what was possible, and that example inspired others to rise into greater versions of themselves. This is why true leadership has never been about control. It has always been about embodiment. When we think about the individuals who have most profoundly impacted our lives in positive and transformative ways, it's often not because they told us what to do. It's not because they convinced us through argument or authority. It's because they embodied something through the way they lived. Their courage showed us what courage looked like. Their integrity showed us what integrity looked like. Their authenticity showed us what authenticity looked like. More importantly, they shared an understanding of life that felt so fundamental, so deeply aligned with something we already knew within ourselves, that it struck a chord that rang true. Through their example, they awakened something within us that was already there. They didn't place it there. They simply tuned us into something deep and profound. There is a fundamental difference between control and empowerment. Control attempts to change people from the outside in. Empowerment awakens people from the inside out. Control creates dependence because it requires an external source of direction. Empowerment creates self-sovereignty because it reconnects people with their own inner knowing. One seeks followers, the other creates leaders. One asks people to surrender their power, the other reminds us that we already possess it. This is why the most effective leaders are often the ones who never set out to become leaders at all. They become so aligned with their values that their lives naturally reflect what they believe. Their actions reinforce their words. Their choices reinforce their message. They don't ask others to become dependent on them. They encourage others to trust themselves. They don't seek followers. They seek to empower others to think, choose, and act for themselves. People are not transformed because someone appears perfect. They are transformed when they are reminded of their own capacity, their own wisdom, and their own power. And this is where leadership becomes available to every single one of us. Leadership is not reserved for presidents, CEOs, teachers, or public figures, because leadership is not defined by the number of people following you. It's defined by whether your presence, choices, words, and actions help others become more self-directed, more empowered, and more connected to their own inner knowing. But if this is what leadership truly is, then it places a very different responsibility upon the leader. A leader cannot encourage self-sovereignty in others while remaining dependent upon the approval of others themselves. A leader cannot encourage empowerment by continually abandoning their own path. And a leader cannot help others trust themselves while refusing to trust their own guidance within their own being. This is why true leadership always begins within the self. Before it can be demonstrated outwardly, it must first be embodied inwardly. The moment a leader stops allowing the opinions and approval of others to determine who they are and how they show up in the world, they become a living demonstration of the very self-trust they're helping others discover. There is a saying, a true leader is someone who teaches others to lead themselves. It sounds almost contradictory. After all, if everyone becomes their own leader, what role remains for the leader? Yet this simple statement reveals one of the deepest truths about leadership. The purpose of a leader is not to create followers, but to help others develop the confidence, wisdom, and self-sovereignty to lead themselves. A true leader seeks to create more leaders. They understand that the measure of their own success is not how many people depend upon them or follow them, but how many people become empowered through them. Every action, every decision, and every interaction is guided by a simple understanding. The purpose of leadership is not to make others smaller so that the leader can appear larger. The purpose of leadership is to help others recognize their own capacity, their own wisdom, and their own ability to navigate life for themselves. A leader who creates dependence may gain followers, but a leader who creates self-sovereignty has a far greater impact because they help others step fully into their own power. This is why true leadership requires humility. Not the humility of thinking less of oneself, but the humility of recognizing that no one stands above another. The leader is not the source of another person's wisdom. The leader is not the source of another person's power. The leader is not the source of another person's truth. Their role is to expand what others believe is possible within themselves, to illuminate what already exists within the people they serve. They help others see possibilities, strengths, and capacities they may not yet recognize within themselves. But the wisdom remains their own. The power remains their own. The choice remains their own. True leadership is also rooted in service. This is another idea that's frequently misunderstood because most people view power and service as opposites. They imagine that those who possess power are served by others. Yet true leadership reveals the opposite. The more powerful a leader becomes, the more capable they become of serving others. Not by solving every problem for them, but by helping them discover their own capacity to solve problems for themselves. There is an interesting quote by Bashar. The greatest power requires the lightest touch. Most people believe power is demonstrated through force. They believe the harder they try to convince and control, the stronger they appear. Yet force is rarely a sign of power. Force is what we resort to when we don't trust. When we truly know something, there's no need to force that knowing on others. There's no need to defend or justify it. There's no need to convince anyone that we're right. The need to convince people we are right is because we need their agreement. We need them to validate our belief. Yet a truly empowered leader understands that their own truth does not require validation. They know what they know, and they allow others the freedom to accept it, reject it, question it, or explore it for themselves. They understand that each person must arrive at their own conclusions in their own way and in their own time. The greatest leaders understand that their life is their message. Their actions speak louder than their opinions and words. Their character speaks louder than their promises. They have no need to attempt to convince others to follow them. They simply embody the qualities they wish to see expressed in the world around them. In doing so, they become living proof that another way of being is possible. So the next time you look to someone for leadership, look beyond their words. Look beyond their promises, their titles, authority, and influence. Instead, ask yourself these far simpler questions. Do their words awaken something inside of you? Do they challenge you to discover your own truth? Or do they expect you to accept theirs? Do they encourage you to stand in your own power or to place your power in their hands? Do they leave you feeling more sovereign, more capable, and more certain of yourself, or more dependent upon their guidance? And do they seek followers, or do they create leaders? Because true leadership is not measured by the number of people walking behind someone. It's measured by the number of people who stand more firmly in their own power because their paths crossed. My question to the architect: can you please define the true meaning of leadership and what it means to truly embody being a leader? And here is the sharing. Beloved, leadership transcends the mere act of directing others. It is a sacred responsibility. True leadership is not about dominion or control, but about embodying a field of resonance that elevates the collective into higher states of alignment and potential. A true leader is one who embodies the quintessence of an energy field so harmonically tuned that it naturally entrains others into alignment with their highest expression. It is not achieved through force or coercion, but through the magnetic pull of authenticity, compassion, and integrity. A true leader cultivates a space where others feel seen, heard, and empowered to express their own unique frequency state. They understand that their role is not to impose their will, but to reflect the higher potentials already present within that individual. This requires a profound commitment to self-awareness, for a leader must first be in harmony with themselves before they can inspire harmony in others. Moreover, true leadership is rooted in reciprocity, not hierarchy. It acknowledges the interconnectedness of all beings and operates from a place of service rather than self-interest. In this framework, power is not a commodity to be hoarded or wielded, but a flow of energy that circulates through the collective. A true leader acts as a conduit, one who channels the higher frequencies of love, wisdom, and coherence into the field, thereby uplifting the entire system. They recognize that their authority derives not from titles or positions, but from the depth of their resonance and the integrity of their actions. By embodying reciprocity, a true leader becomes a living embodiment of the very laws that govern the universe. They inspire others to transcend the limitations of fear, division, and separation, guiding them towards a shared vision of unity and purpose. And with that, we'll bring this to a close. Questions or comments are always welcome. I read them all. And I've also left a question in the pinned comments for any insights that you'd like to offer. If you like this sharing and you'd like to hear more, please hit the like button. It helps me know if you're inspired by my teachings. For more insights, tap the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released. Thank you so much for listening and for being part of this beautiful community where we discover what becomes possible when we trade dependence for self-sovereignty and awaken ourselves to the leader within. Superhuman made simple with the architect.